There were maybe about 10 to 12 folks at the time. It was the early part of 2005. I was just about to graduate high school, but it was a young company. I mean, no one really knew that it was going to become the juggernaut that it is today. So it was definitely a fun time. I remember my interview with Mark and Sean Parker at the time was on the roof of the office because they had set up a makeshift barbecue area that was above World Wraps, which was like kind of a not so great restaurant in Palo Alto. It was a fun time. I mean, there was a ton of graffiti in the office. I was 17, so I was a little bit daunted by the weirdness. I felt weird, but it felt cool. I had never really experienced using Facebook at the time. I was the only person at the company that couldn't use the product. And so I had to go into this interview not really knowing what it was. And they were really at the time looking for just smart people, engineering talent. I think people forget that during this time in 2004, 2005, if you were a very, very good engineer, you just went to Google. Like it had just gone public. It was a company where all the best engineering talent flocked to Ford. And in a startup's case at that time, it was actually kind of challenging to recruit, especially because a lot of engineering talent sort of had gotten burned by joining startups in the dot-com boom. So if you were a new Stanford or Harvard or MIT or Berkeley computer scientist at the top of your class, you probably were looking for Google stock units over startup equity that wasn't necessarily real or valuable yet. Not to mention that social networking, it was unclear who the winner was. In fact, at that time, MySpace was seemed to be the winner. And it was also kind of depressing the day that MySpace got bought. We were all in the office. We found out that MySpace got bought for 580 million. And they had 80 million users at the time. We had maybe 2 million users, and people were doing math on like, okay, well, what's Facebook worth on that comp? And this is one of the reasons why I don't really trust comps, especially for category defining companies anymore, because that comp ultimately was silly because the value of Facebook exceeded the MySpace valuation very, very quickly thereafter. The users were more engaged. The product sense of the founder was much stronger than MySpace. So it was, I can't say I was an incredibly good engineer, but I got done what needed to get done at the time and worked on a bunch of different projects. I was also extremely young and sort of didn't realize how special the time was. I don't think anyone really realized how special it was at the time. But looking back, when you have hindsight, you really realize that Mark was a one in a billion founder. He had an extremely strong product sense. And I think he was very, very good at doing what was best for the company and not really being too emotional about like being pulled in different directions by what competitors or investors or other people wanted. And he had surrounded himself with really top quality people, which is a key thing as a founder when you build a company.